Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today I'll be taking you through the Math Calculator section of SAT Practice Test 5. I'll be moving quickly and efficiently through this section to show you how you can maintain efficiency on the SAT Calculator section. I'll be completing this in under 30 minutes to give you an idea of how you can move quickly and efficiently, so let's go ahead and get started. Question 1. According to the line graph above, between which two consecutive years was there the greatest change in the number of 3D movies released? All right, well, if I look at my graph, my greatest change in the number of 3D movies released, which is on my y-axis, is going to be where I have the greatest slope. I have the greatest slope from 2010 to 2011, so therefore that will be my answer, and that will be D. Question 2. Some values of the linear function f are shown in the table above. Which of the following defines f? Well, if I see I have a run of 2, I increase my x by 2, I increase my rise, or my y value, by 8. So my slope then will be my rise over run, 8 over 2, which is equal to 4. So I'll have y equals 4x. And now I have to solve for my y-intercept. I see I have a 1 here, so if I go back 1, I'll be at 0, which will give me my y-intercept when I then subtract 4 from 5, right? Because that's my slope. And if I go back 1, I have to subtract my slope of 4. So 5 minus 4 gives me 1, so I have y equals 4x plus 1, which will be C. Question 3. To make a bakery's signature chocolate muffins, a baker needs 2.5 ounces of chocolate for each muffin. How many pounds of chocolate are needed to make 48 signature muffins? Well, I have 2.5 ounces per muffin, and I have 48 muffins. So this gives me my amount of ounces. 2.5 times 48, I plug that into my calculator, and that gives me 120. So that's how many ounces I have, but I need my answer in pounds. Well, 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces, so I do 120 divided by 16 to get my answer in pounds. 120 divided by 16 is 7.5 pounds. So our answer there will be A. Alright, question 4. If 3 times c plus d equals 5, what is the value of c plus d? Alright, well, what we can do is we can divide each side by 3 to isolate c plus d, and we see that c plus d is equal to 5 over 3, so our answer there will be B. Question 5. The weight of an object on Venus is approximately 9/10 of its weight on Earth. The weight of an object on Jupiter is approximately 23/10 of its weight on Earth. If an object weighs 100 pounds on Earth, approximately how many more pounds does it weigh on Jupiter than on Venus? Well, we see on Jupiter, we weigh 23/10 of what we weigh on Earth. And we see on Venus, we weigh 9/10. And we're looking for the difference between those because we want to know how many more pounds we would weigh on Jupiter than Venus. So we do our 100 pounds times the difference. Well, 23 over 10 minus 9 over 10 leaves us with 14 over 10. So now we do 100 times 14 over 10. That's 100 times 1.4, which will give us 140 for our answer, which is C. Question 6. An online bookstore sells novels and magazines. Each novel sells for $4, and each magazine sells for $1. So we have 4N plus 1 magazine for our costs. If Sadie purchased a total of 11 novels and magazines that have a combined selling price of 20, how many novels did she purchase? All right, so we have to solve for N, our novels. Well, we have a total of novels and magazines equals 11, so we can use that to solve for our amount of novels, right? Because we have our total cost equation down here, and we can see that when we manipulate our equation N plus M equals 11, we can get M equals 11 minus N. Now when we plug that in for M, we'll have 4N plus 1 times M. We know M is 11 minus N equals 20, right? So now we'll have 4N minus N, which will give us 3N, and then we'll have plus 11 on this side, but we're going to subtract it. So we have 20 minus 11, right? We subtracted that 11 from both sides. So now we're left with 9 equals 4N minus N, which is 3N. So we know our N will equal 3. So our answer is going to be B. Question 7. The Downtown Business Association in a certain city plans to increase its membership by a total number of N businesses per year. There were B businesses in the DBA at the beginning of this year. Which function best models the total number of businesses Y the DBA plans to have as members X years from now? Well, they're increasing by N per year, X years, right, times X years, plus what we started with, which was B. So we're going to have Y equals NX plus B, which is A. Question 8, which of the following is an equivalent form of this equation here? Well, I'm looking at my answer choices, and what I notice off the bat, I'm looking for any part of our answer choices that are different in each question or in each answer choice, and I see my N term is different in each one. So I'm just going to solve for that N term, and that'll give me my answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see I have negative 2.4 squared. So I got negative 2.4 squared, and then I have minus negative 6.4. Well, minus a negative gives me a positive, so I'll have plus 6.4, right? And that'll give me my end term. So I plug in negative 2.4 squared in my calculator. That's just the same as 2.4 squared because that negative will turn to a positive, and I get 5.76. Then I add that 5.76 with 6.4, and I get 12.16, right? So that'll be my answer, which is C, because that has that final term as 12.16. All right, now we've got question 9. In the 1908 Olympic Games, the Olympic marathon was lengthened from 40 kilometers to approximately 42 kilometers. Of the following, which is closest to the increase in the distance in the Olympic marathon in miles? All right, well, we went from 40 kilometers to 42, so we increased by 2 kilometers. We needed the increase in miles, so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 1 mile per 1.6 kilometers. That way our kilometers cancel. So when you're doing unit conversions, you put the unit that you want to cancel on the bottom and the other unit on the top, right? So we're going to have 2 divided by 1.6, and that'll give us 1.25 miles. So that will be choice B. All right, question 10. The density D of an object is found by dividing the mass by volume. Which of the following equations gives mass in terms of D and V? Well, we know density equals M over V. We multiply each side by V, and we see that our mass is going to equal our density times our volume, which is equation A. Question 11, in the xy plane, the graph of which of the following equations is perpendicular to the graph of the equation above? All right, well, this is in standard form because we have our x and then our y there, right? So we have standard form. Now, when we have that in equation, what we're going to do to find the slope is we are going to do negative A over B, where x is our A, right? Our x is our A, and then or our coefficient of x, right? So that 2 will be our A, and then our 3 there will be our B, right? That coefficient of the y. So negative A over B here, we have our A is negative 2, but we have negative 2, which leaves us with 2. And then we have our B of 3, so we're going to have 2 over 3. So that's our slope for our first equation. But we're asked for the equation of a line that's perpendicular to the graph above. Well, if it's perpendicular, it's going to be the reciprocal, right? And then the opposite sign. So here's positive, so we know we're going to have a negative, and then the reciprocal, which will be 3 over 2. So now we have all these equations in standard form. We also have to do negative A over B, and we have to get that to equal, or I'm sorry, I wrote that wrong. And we have to get that to equal our negative 3 over 2. So we're going to have negative A over B. We look at our equations, so we're looking for a 3 and a 2. I see that we have that here, so now I check to make sure all my signs work. So I have negative 3 for my A. Because A is 3, we have negative that here, and then we have that all over B. We see we have B here is 2, negative 3 over 2. That is the slope that we need, so that will be A. All right, now we move on to question 12. The system of inequalities above has solution xy. What is the value of x? All right, when I see equations stacked up vertically, I'm looking to add or subtract them to eliminate one variable. I see if I add them, I have 1/2 y minus 1/2 y, right? Plus negative, same as minus. That's going to get rid of my y. It's going to leave me with x equals 4 plus 2, which is 6. I'm asked for the value of x. My answer is going to be D, 6. Question 13. Which of the following ordered pairs xy satisfies the system of inequalities above? All right, well, I'm going to try and go ahead and get them in y on each side, right? So I'm going to add y over here, and then I'm going to subtract 1, right? So now I'm left with x minus 1 has to be greater than y. And then I have my other equation, which is that y has to be less than or equal to 3x plus 1. All right, so now when I look at this, I see I have all these choices here, but what I want to determine first is which equation am I using at what points, right? So if I look at this, I know that 3x plus 1 is going to be greater than x minus 1 for all their values where x is greater than negative 1. So when I see that, then I'm looking at x is greater than 1, or where x is greater than negative 1, I know that 3x plus 1 will have to be, or I'm sorry, not 3x plus 1. I know where x is greater than negative 1, right? My x minus 1 will have to be greater than my y, right? So that's the equation that I'm going to use here. And then I also know then that where x is not greater than minus 1, right? Where x is less than or equal to negative 1, I'm going to use the equation 3x plus 1 has to be greater than y. Right, so now what I can do is I can go through and I can find which point answers that. So when I look up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where x is greater than negative 1. Well, where are my points where x is greater than negative 1? I see that they're right here, right? I have 2 and 1. So I'm going to plug in 1, try that first. Well, if I plug in 1 to this equation right here, I have 1 minus 1, that's 0. Is 0 greater than 5? It's not. So now I look at D2, right? I plug in 2 for x, and I have 2 minus 1, that's 1. Is that greater than the negative 1 here? It is. So my answer there will be D. All right, now I move on to question 14. All right, I'm given a table here. In a survey, 607 general surgeons and orthopedic surgeons indicated their major professional activity. The results are summarized in the table above. If one of the surgeons is selected at random, which of the following is closest to the probability that the selected surgeon is an orthopedic surgeon whose indicated professional activity is research? All right, so orthopedic surgeon and research, we see we have 74. We're told it's out of the total because it's a random. We have 74 over 607. I plug that into my calculator, and I'm going to get 74 over 607. 74 over 607. 0.122, right? So the answer choice is going to be A there. All right, question 15. Make sure we got the other ones real quick. Okay, we did. All right, question 15. All right, a polling agency recently surveyed 1,000 adults who were selected at random from a large city and asked each of the adults, are you satisfied with the quality of air in the city? Of those surveyed, 78% responded they were satisfied with the quality of air in the city. Based on the results, which of the following must be true? Of all adults in the city, 78% are satisfied with the quality of air in the city. That doesn't have to be true because we only surveyed 1,000 of them, and there could be variance of about a couple percent either way when we actually do all of the adults. If another 1,000 adults selected at random from the city were surveyed, 78% of them would report that they are satisfied with the quality of air in the city. Well, no, like we said, we could have a little bit of variance. 1,000 isn't that large, right? So it's possible it could be 77, it could be 76, 79. Then statement 3, if 1,000 adults selected at random from a different city were surveyed, 78% would report they are satisfied with the quality of air in the city. No, that's a completely different city. That's definitely not true. So we know A, none of those statements are true. All right, question 16 is referring to the information above here. According to the information in the table, what is the approximate age of an American elm tree with a diameter of 12 inches? All right, so I got this table. I read my little description here. One method of calculating the approximate age in years of a tree is to multiply the diameter of the tree in inches by a constant called the growth factor. The table above gives growth factor for 8 different species of trees. All right, so I'm asked about an American elm. I'm asked to solve for the age when the diameter is 12 inches. So I'm going to do 12 inches times my growth factor for American elm, which is 4, and that will give me 48 years. So my answer there is D. All right, now I got tree diameter versus age. The scatter plot gives the tree diameter plotted against age for 26 trees of a single species. The growth factor of this species is closest to that of which of the following species? All right, well, I know that my age is equal to my diameter, right? A equals my diameter times my growth factor. So if I take A and I divide it by my diameter, then I get G, right? And that's what I'm doing here when I draw this line of best fit. So now I'm going to draw over from 100 because that's a nice round number. I see I get 100 over 14, and that'll give me my growth factor. When I do that, I see I get 7.14. So now I just go find which tree that's closest to. 7.14 is closest to the shag, bark, hickory because there's none other that are close to 7. So my answer is going to be D. All right, question 18. White birch tree, I'm going to represent that as WB, and a pin oak tree each now have a diameter of 1 foot. Which of the following will be closest to the difference in inches of their diameters 10 years from now? 1 foot's 12 inches. All right, so we're starting from the same place, right? Now their age, each of them is going to change by 10 years. So I'm just going to put in 10 because all we care about is the change. So now I got to go find their growth factors. So I've got WB and PO. So white birch has a growth factor of 5 and pin oak has one of 3. So I've got equals 5 times D and equals 3 times D. Now keep in mind they're the same diameter right now, so we're looking for the change in diameter, right? So now when I look at the change in diameter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each side of the white birch equation by 5, and I get 2 equals my change in diameter. And then for pin oak, I'm going to have to divide each side by 3. and that's going to give me 10 over 3. So 10 over 3 will give me my change in diameter. Remember, we started from the same point for diameter, so our difference in the diameters is going to be our 10/3 minus 2. 2 can be rewritten as 6 over 3, and that will leave us with 4/3 as our difference, and we know 4/3 is going to be 1.3 repeating, which is closest to C, 1.3. Question 19, in triangle ABC above, what is the length of A to D? I'm going to represent that as X for efficiency's sake. I see I have a 30, 60, 90 triangle right here, right? So I can put 60 here, I've got 30 there, so now I can go ahead and solve. Well, I see that this is 60 when you add 30 and 30 up. If I have a 60, 60, 60 triangle, all my sides are the same, so I have a 12 there, a 12 from A to C. So then from A to D is going to be half of A to C, so half of 12 is 6. My answer is going to be B. Question 20, the figure on the left above shows a wheel with a mark on its rim. The wheel is rolling on the ground at a constant rate along a level path straight from a starting point to an ending point. The graph of y equals d of t on the right could represent which of the following is a function of time. So a function of time from when the wheel began to roll. The speed at which the wheel is rolling? No, because it said it rolled at a constant rate. The distance from the wheel from the starting point? No, because that would just increase with time. It wouldn't go up and down. The distance on the mark of the rim from the center of the wheel, that's constant. That's just the radius. It'd be a straight line. Or D, the distance on the mark of the rim. The distance of the mark on the rim from the ground, that will fluctuate as the little dot goes from the bottom to the top, right? So that one's going to give us our up and down pattern like we see in the graph. So choice is going to be D. In the equation above, if A is negative, B is positive, which the following must be true. All right, well, I see that this equation here could be rewritten as A over A minus B over A equals C. A over A gives me 1. Then I have minus B over A. We know B is positive, so we're just going to leave that there. And we know A is negative. Well, if A is negative, we have minus a negative number, right? Because a positive over a negative is going to be negative. That means we're going to add. So then we can say B over the absolute value of A, and we have that addition equals C. When we do that, we see that C then will have to equal 1 plus a number, and it can't be 0 because A is negative and B is positive. They're not 0. So we're going to have 1 plus a number equals C. Therefore, C will have to be greater than 1. Our answer will be A. All right, in State X, Mr. Camp's 8th grade class consisting of 26 students was surveyed, and 34.6% of the students reported that they had at least 2 siblings. The average 8th grade class size is 26 in that state. If the students in Mr. Camp's class are representative of students in the state's 8th grade class, and there are 1,800 8th grade classes in that state, which of the following best estimates the number of 8th grade students in the state who have fewer than 2 siblings? Pay attention to that. That's fewer than 2 siblings. Up here we were given the percentage of those who had at least 2. So if we're doing fewer, we have to do 100 minus our 34.6%, right? And that's going to give us 100 minus 34.6 leaves us with 65.4%, right? Now if we write that in decimal form, that's 0.654, and we need to do that because we have to multiply that by our class size, 26, and then by our number of classes, 1,800, to get our total number of students. And when we do that, we get 30,607, which is closest to 30,600, so our answer there is going to be C. All right. The relationship between the monthly rental price R in dollars and the property's purchase price in thousands of dollars can be represented by a linear function. Which of the following functions represents the relationship? All right, well, I'm told my purchase price is in thousands of dollars, right? But my rental is just in dollars. So I got to get rid of these thousands here so that way I don't mess up my units. So now when I do that, I see I have to find the slope, right? Well, my slope's going to be my rise over run, right? Or my y value, which is RP, over my x value, right? My increase in y over my increase in x. So when I do that 950, right? I'm just going to pick one and I'm going to use it. So I'll pick that 950, that Clearwater Lane, and I'm going to divide it by that 128 to get my slope. When I do that, I get 7.4, which is closest to 7.5, right? So I'm looking at D as my answer choice, and I check that to make sure my y-intercept doesn't mess with it real quick. So I put in 950 should equal 7.5 times 128, and 7.5 times 128 is equal to 960. 960 minus 10 is equal to 950. I know that's my answer. So now I move on. Question 24. Townsend Realty purchased the Glenview Street property and received a 40% discount off the original price, along with an additional 20% off the discounted price for purchasing the property in cash. Which of the following best approximates the original price in dollars of the Glenview Street property? All right, well, we know our original price times 0.6, right? Because we got 40% discount off the original price. That's going to give us our discount price, which then received 20% off of that. 20% off of that means we're going to multiply by 0.08 to give us our purchase price, which we are told in that graph, Glenview Street, our purchase price was $140,000. All right, so I'm going to move this over so we can see this. So we got $140,000. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate this to solve for my original price. So when I do that, I have to divide by 0.6, and I got to also divide by 0.8. So I do that, I divide this side by 0.8 and 0.6. So now I'm going to plug that into my calculator here, and we will see what I get. So I got 140,000 divided by 0.8 in parentheses times 0.6 end parentheses, right? I do that, and I get 291,000 and about 700. So my answer there is going to be B. All right, question 25. Make sure I answered all those. I did. All right, question 25. A psychologist set up an experiment to study the tendency of a person to select the first item when presented with a series. In the experiment, 300 people were presented with a set of 5 pictures arranged in a random order. Each person was asked to choose the most appealing picture. Of the first 150 participants, 36 chose the first picture in the set. Among the remaining 150 participants, P people chose the first picture in the set. If more than 20% of all participants chose the first picture in the set, which of the following inequalities best describes possible values of P? All right, well, we know that P plus 36 then, right? P plus 36 is going to be my total amount that picked it, and that has to be greater than our 20% of our total, which is 300. So we got 20% represented by 0.2 times 300, and we know our total amount of people who picked it is P plus 36, and it has to be greater than that. So we know our answer there is going to be D. And we also know P has to be less than or equal to 150, because that's all the participants that were participating in that second trial run there. All right, the surface area of a cube is 6 times quantity a over 4 squared, where a is a positive constant. Which of the following gives the perimeter of one face of the cube? All right, well, surface area, right, SA, that's equal to 6 times the area of each side. Well, that means that my area of each side then is going to be my a over 4 squared. So I've got my a over 4 squared, right? That's my area, and we know my area then for a cube, right? For that side, the side of a square is s squared. I root that to get my side length, right? So my side length is going to be a over 4. And now I'm asked for my perimeter. I can use that side length then to find the perimeter because all the sides are the same. So I'm going to have 4 sides times my a over 4 is going to give me my perimeter. Right, so my perimeter of one face of the cube, I got 4 times a over 4. My 4's will cancel, and I'm left with a. So my answer is going to be B. Question 27. The mean score of 8 players in a basketball game was 14.5 points. Right, so I got 14.5. It's going to equal my total over my 8 players. And now, if the highest individual score is removed, the mean score of the remaining 7 players becomes 12 points. What was the highest score? All right, so 7 players, they scored an average of 12 points. So their total, I'm going to call TOT, total. So I'm going to multiply 7 by 12 to get my total there. Right, so that gives me 84. Right, so I know my total there is going to be 84. Well, going back up here, I know that that 84 of those 7 players, plus my 8th players, which I'll call B, just to give me a value for it, right? That 8th player then scored B points. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 8 by 14.5, and then I'm going to minus that 84 to solve for B. So I'm going to do 8 times 14.5 in my calculator, right? That gives me 116. Now I subtract 84 from each side, right? So I've got 116 minus 84, and I know that that is going to leave me with 32. So my answer there is going to be C. All right, moving on. Question 28. The graph of the linear function f is shown in the xy plane. The slope of the graph of the linear function g is 4 times the slope of the graph of f. All right, well, my slope for my function y equals f of x, I run 2, I rise 1, so my slope then is 1/2. I'm told that my function g of x, its slope is 4 times 1.5. 4 times 1.5 is 2, so I'll have 2x, and it passes through the point 0, -4, so that means my y-intercept is -4, so I'll have 2x minus 4 as my equation. What's the value of g of 9? That's going to be 2 times 9 minus 4. I know that 2 times 9 is equal to 18, and I know 18 minus 4 is equal to 14. My answer is going to be 14, C. All right, question 29. The equation above defines a circle in the xy plane. What are the coordinates of the center of the circle? All right, well, if our center point is hk, we know the equation of a circle is going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So when I look at my values here, I see I have x squared plus 20x. Well, in order to get plus 20x with x minus h, right, I know that I have to have then x plus 10 squared, right, because then I get that x times the 10 from the other side, and then the x from the other side times the 10 from this side. And when I do that, I'm going to get x squared plus 20x, right? So in order for me to have this plus 10 here, I have to have minus h. Well, h will have to equal negative 10 then, because negative minus negative will get me that positive, that x plus 10. So I know that my x value has to be negative 10. The only answer choice with that is B, so B will be my answer. All right, in the equation above, a is a positive constant, and the graph of the equation in the xy plane is a parabola. Which of the following is an equivalent form of the equation? All right, when I see this, I'm looking for the difference of perfect squares, right? I'm looking for an x plus a number, right? We'll call it a number. We'll just pick one, right? So we're looking for x plus a constant, right, times x minus a constant. And this isn't my answer choice. It's not A. It's not A. I'm just using this for demonstration purposes. And that gives me x squared minus a squared, right? Well, I know A is just A, right? So if I want this, what I'd actually have to do is I'd have to get the root of that, right? So if I want that, then I have to actually have x plus the square root of A minus the square root of A. Because when I do that, then I get x squared x squared minus my root A times my my root A times root A, right? Root A times root A is the same as root A squared. So then I get x squared minus A. So we can see our equation then will be x plus the square root of A times x minus the square root of A, right? Difference of perfect squares. All right, now we got question 31. We're on to the fill in the blank section. Horsepower in watts, they're directly proportional such that 5 horsepower is equal to 3730 watts. How much power in watts is equal to 2 horsepower? All right, well, if we do our ratio, then we're going to have 2/5, right, times 3730, and that'll give us our amount of watts, right? All right, so we do that, we get 2 over 5, the same as 0.4 times 3730, and we'll get 1492. That'll be our answer. That's how many watts are in 2 horsepower. All right. Painting Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh is rectangular in shape with height 29 inches and width 36.25 inches. If a reproduction was made where each dimension is 1/3 the corresponding original dimension, what is the height of the reproduction in inches? All right, well, we're told our height of the original is 29. We're told our replica corresponds to 1/3 the original, so we're going to have 29 times 1/3, which is 29 over 3. That'll be our answer there. 33. We're told that PQ equals RS. What is the length of PS? PS is my whole thing here, so I got to solve for x in order to find that. So I got x minus 1 then is equal to 3x minus 7. What I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract x here, get rid of it, subtract x. I got 2x, I add 7 to each side, right? And then negative 1 plus 7 gives me 6, divide each side by 2. 6 over 2 is 3, which means x is 3. Right, I plug that in here, I get 3 there. And then I get 3 minus 1. I know that that is going to give me 2. And I know that PQ equals RS, so that's 2. 2 plus 3 plus 2 gives me 7. So my answer there is going to be 7. All right. 34. In the xy plane, the point 2,5 lies on the graph of a function f. If f of x equals k minus x squared, where k is a constant, what is the value of k? All right, well, I know I can plug in 5 for f of x. So now I get 5 equals k minus x squared. We know x is 2. We know 2 squared is 4. K minus 4, I add 4 to each side, right? Now I get 9 equals K, so my answer is going to be 9. All right, 35. A landscaper is designing a rectangular garden. The length of the garden is to be, all right, my length, that's a bad L. All right, let me put an L like this then. All right, the length is to be 5 feet longer than the width, right? So my length is going to be my width plus 5. If the area of the garden will be 104 square feet, right, so 104, that's going to be my area, which is going to be L times W. Then what will be the length, and if the area will be 104, what will be the length in feet of the garden? All right, so I got to solve for L here. All right, to solve for L, I need to get what my W equals in terms of L. All right, so then I know that my W will equal L minus 5, so I'll have L times my quantity. This is parentheses, not an L, right? L minus 5. I do that, distribute my L. I get L squared minus 5L equals 104. Now when I do that, I see that there's not really anything I can do here except subtract 104 from each side and then factor it. So when I do that, I'm looking for factors of I'm looking for factors of negative 104 that have a sum of negative 5, right? So when I do that, I'll be honest, I can kind of just tell 104, that's equivalent to, I can do 8 times 10, right? That gets me 80, and then I need 3 more, right? 8 times 3, that's 24. 24 plus 80 is 104. So I know I also have to have that 13, right, then, because that 10 plus 3, that 13, has to be my negative, because I have negative 5 here. So that'd be x plus 8 there. Another way you could do it, you could use the quadratic formula. You could also take this equation here, right, that I'm putting in parentheses. You can set that equal to 0 if you wanted to, and then see where it hits 0 on your calculator, right, and then solve for L that way. But I did it this way, right, and now I can see x will equal 13 or negative 8, but we can't have a negative length then, right? We can't have negative length. So my answer then has to be 13 for the length. All right, point P is the center of the circle in the figure above. What is the value of x? All right, what I see off the bat here is I have this quadrilateral here, right? I got all these 4 sides. That's my quadrilateral. I know the interior angles then, they have to add up to 360. And I also see that this angle A here, it's the inscribed angle of x, right? So when you see this, I have angle x here, right? Well, I know that this angle A then, because it's inscribed, has to be x over 2. So what I can say then, I have 20 here, I have a 20 here, right? So I've got that 20 degrees plus 20 degrees plus my x over 2 degrees. And then keep in mind this all has to equal 360 because it's all the interior angles of quadrilateral. And then I have 360 degrees, right? The 360 degrees in a circle minus x to give me my angle P there, right? So plus 360 minus x. All right, so I do that. I see I get 20 plus 20 is 40, and then I get plus 360, so that's 400, right? I have to subtract 400 from each side. 360 minus 400 gives me negative 40, and that's going to equal my x over 2 minus x. X over 2 minus x, that's going to give me minus x over 2, so I have minus x over 2 equals negative 40. Multiply each side by 2, and I get negative 80 equals negative x, which means that when I divide each side by negative 1 or multiply by negative 1, I'm going to get x is equal to 80. So my answer is going to be 80 there. All right, question 37 and 38. One morning, Miss Simon drove directly from her home to workplace in 24 minutes. What was her average speed in miles per hour during her drive that morning? All right, well, average speed, we know average speed is going to equal our distance over our time. We're given our 24 minutes, but we need miles per hour. So 24 minutes divided by 60 minutes gives us our amount of hours. So we do 24 over 60 in the calculator. We're going to get 0.4 hours for t. Now for the total distance that she drove, she went from home to her freeway entrance, then from the freeway entrance to the freeway exit, and then from the freeway exit to her workplace. So it's going to be the sum of all of these. 0.6 plus 15.4 gives me 16. 16 plus 1.4 gives me 17.4. So I'll have 17.4 all over 0.4. Plug that into my equation, and I get 43.5. So 43.5 miles per hour is her average speed. All right, now I got 38. If Miss Simon starts her drive at 6:30, she can drive at her average driving speed with no traffic delay for each segment of the drive. If she starts her drive at 7 a.m., the travel time from the freeway entrance to the freeway exit, which is right here, increases by 33% due to slower traffic. But the travel time for each of the other 2 segments does not change. Based on the table, how many more minutes does Miss Simon take to arrive at her workplace if she starts her drive at 7 a.m. than if she starts her drive at 6:30? All right, so we need the difference. Our difference is only going to be the amount of time she spends in minutes on her freeway entrance times 0.33 because it's that 33%. So what I do is I take that 15.4, I divide it by 50, right? And I get that because my speed is 50, right? I know speed is equal to distance over time. I need to solve for time, multiply each side by t, right? And then I divide by 50. So I get my distance 15.4 over 50 gives me t. So when I do that, I get 0.308 hours, right? So that's how many hours I have. So I multiply by 60 to get my amount of minutes, right? So I get 18.5 for 8 minutes, but I have to multiply that by 0.33 because that's how much our driving time will increase. So I multiply by 0.33 and I get 6. I'm told to round to the nearest minute, right? So I'll have 6 minutes is going to be our increase. So that's going to be our answer there. Thank you for watching Preeminent Test Prep. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share as we will be releasing more videos to help you prepare for the SAT.